I still remember that weekend vividly. It started like any other Friday evening, calm, warm, with the sunset melting into the horizon over our small neighborhood in Portland, Oregon. I had just finished a tough week at school, and I was more than ready for a couple of days of rest. But I didn't know then that those 2 days would change everything between me and my cousin, Travis. Travis and I weren't blood relatives. His mom, Aunt Rachel, had married my dad's brother when we were kids. We had grown up together, attended the same elementary school, had sleepovers, and teased each other like siblings. But as we both grew older, things had started to feel different, especially lately. He had turned 18 a few months back, and I was just a year younger. He had that classic Pacific Northwest charm. Messy brown hair, sea blue eyes, and that lazy grin that made most girls at school blush. I'd always brushed off those feelings, telling myself it was just admiration, nothing more. That weekend, our parents were heading to Seattle for a family wedding we couldn't attend due to exams. So, my parents asked Aunt Rachel if I could stay at her house while they were gone. She agreed, and off they went. It was just me, Travis, and an empty house for 2.5 days. The first night was quiet. Travis made popcorn and put on an old 80s movie. We laughed at the cheesy effects and shared stories from school. He told me about this girl in his math class who kept texting him, and I tried to act uninterested, but something twisted in my stomach. I told him about a guy in my history class who had asked me out, and his jaw tightened just a little. We noticed each other's reactions, but neither of us said a word. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the curtains, waking me earlier than I'd hoped. I walked downstairs in my oversized hoodie and socks, only to find Travis already up, making pancakes like he was auditioning for a cooking show. "Morning, sleepyhead," he grinned. "Hope you're hungry." "I didn't know you could cook," I said, raising an eyebrow. He laughed. "Don't underestimate me. I make killer pancakes." We sat down to eat, just the two of us. There was something comfortable in that moment, but also something electric, like the silence between us was louder than the conversation. After breakfast, we decided to clean up the backyard. Aunt Rachel had mentioned the overgrown lawn, and Travis suggested we surprise her by trimming it. We worked side by side, our hands getting muddy, sweat clinging to our foreheads. He lifted his shirt at one point to wipe his face, and I turned away too quickly, embarrassed by where my eyes had wandered. But I caught him looking at me, too, like he was trying to figure something out. That afternoon, the rain rolled in, sudden and heavy. We rushed back inside, drenched. Laughing, I ran up the stairs to change, slipping on the wet floor and almost falling. Travis caught me, his hands gripping my arms just long enough for the moment to hang between us. I looked up into his eyes, and he didn't let go immediately. We didn't say anything then. We just pulled apart awkwardly, and I mumbled something about dry clothes. When evening fell, he suggested ordering pizza. We picked out toppings and debated over which Netflix show to binge. The energy between us was growing thick. It wasn't uncomfortable, just confusing. Something was happening, and neither of us could stop it. We sat on opposite ends of the couch, legs tangled in a shared blanket. A scene from the show made me laugh, and I leaned over, hitting his arm playfully. He looked at me, really looked at me. His expression shifted, serious, curious, hesitant. "Can I ask you something?" he said quietly. "Yeah," I replied, my heart already speeding up. "Have you ever thought about what things would be like if we weren't, technically cousins?" I froze. I didn't know what to say, because yes, I had thought about it. Many times. But I never thought he had. "I mean," he went on, his voice rushed, "I know it sounds weird, and maybe I'm overthinking everything. Maybe I'm just confused. But lately, I feel like something's changed between us." "It's not just you," I whispered. There was silence. Not the awkward kind, but the kind that carries weight, truth. He leaned forward, brushing my hair behind my ear, and our faces were close, too close. But we didn't cross that line. He stopped himself, pulling back with a heavy sigh. "I don't want to do something we'll regret," he said. "Neither do I," I replied. "But I don't want to pretend I don't feel this." We spent the rest of the evening in quiet tension, watching the show but not really watching. Both of us wrapped in thoughts we couldn't speak. The next morning, he woke up early and made coffee. I joined him on the porch, wrapped in a blanket. "Let's go somewhere," he said. "Just for a drive." We got into his truck and headed toward the coast. The gray sky loomed above us, and the ocean wind tousled our hair. We walked barefoot on the sand, talking about college, our dreams, our fears. It felt like everything was paused, like the real world couldn't reach us there. And then, sitting by the shore, he looked at me again. "I don't want to ruin what we have. But I also don't want to lie to myself." "Me neither," I said. He took my hand, just briefly. We sat like that, not as cousins, not as siblings, but as two people caught in a complicated truth. That night, back at the house, we were quieter. We knew the weekend was ending. Our parents would be home the next morning. And whatever this was between us, it would have to go back into hiding. "Can we promise something?" he said as we sat outside under the stars. "Anything," I said. "No matter what happens next, we won't forget this weekend. We'll remember it as the time we were honest, even if we don't act on it again." I nodded. "I promise." We hugged that night. A real, long, tight hug that said everything words couldn't. No kisses, no crossed lines, just raw emotion, sealed in silence. The next day, our parents returned. Life resumed. We avoided being alone together for a while. Travis eventually moved to Seattle for college. I stayed behind for one more year. We still text sometimes. And when we do, there's always a little echo of that weekend in the words. Some stories aren't about perfect endings or fairy tale romances. Some are about that one weekend, that one person, that one silence that meant more than words ever could. And that's what happened between us, in the absence of parents.